You did everything right. You saved up. You researched for weeks. You read every review, watched every comparison video, asked everyone you knew. And then you bought the most reliable car you could find. A Toyota, a Honda, maybe a Lexus if you stretched a little. You were responsible, you were smart, you played it safe, and yet somehow, 5 years later, your savings account looks thinner than you expected. You're not sure where the money went. The car never broke down. You barely spent anything on repairs. So what happened? Here's what nobody tells you when you're standing in that dealership, feeling proud of yourself. Reliability is not the same as affordability. And confusing those two words is one of the most expensive mistakes the middle class makes over and over again, generation after generation, without ever realizing it. Let's start with something that sounds completely backwards. The most reliable cars on the market are also some of the most expensive cars to own. Not to fix, to own. There's a massive difference, and that difference is where the money disappears. When Toyota earned its reputation for reliability, something interesting happened. People started paying a premium just to have that badge on the hood. The resale value went up, the purchase price went up, the insurance went up, and suddenly you're paying thousands of dollars extra up front for the privilege of maybe not spending a few $100s on repairs down the road. The math doesn't always work in your favor. But nobody stops to check the math, because the feeling of safety is worth something, and car companies know exactly how to sell that feeling. Think about what reliability actually means in practical terms. It means the car is less likely to break down. That's it. It doesn't mean it's cheap to buy. It doesn't mean it's cheap to insure. It doesn't mean it's cheap to finance. It doesn't mean the depreciation is gentle. It just means the engine probably won't die on you on the highway at 2 in the morning. Which is great. But that one benefit gets bundled into a purchase that costs you tens of thousands of dollars, and the entire transaction gets labeled as the responsible choice. Here's where it gets interesting. The average new Toyota Camry today costs somewhere around $30,000. That's the base price. Before you add anything, finance that over 6 years at a typical interest rate, and you're looking at monthly payments somewhere in the range of $400 to $500. Add insurance, which for a newer vehicle typically runs higher because the lender requires full coverage. Add registration, taxes, and fees. Add fuel. And suddenly the responsible, reliable car is costing you somewhere between $700 and $900 a month when you actually count everything. For a middle-class household bringing home $4,000 to $5,000 a month after taxes, that's close to 20% of your total income going to one depreciating asset. One thing that loses value every single day, you own it. Financial advisors will tell you to keep total transportation costs under 15% of your income. The reliable car just blew that ceiling before you even filled the tank for the first time. But here's the part that really stings. You didn't feel like you were being irresponsible. That's the trap. Every step felt logical. Buying new felt smart because you didn't want someone else's problems. Choosing Toyota felt smart because everyone said it lasts forever. Getting full coverage felt smart because the car costs so much. Stretching the loan to 6 years felt smart because it kept the monthly payment manageable. Each individual decision had a reason behind it, but stacked together, those smart decisions quietly drained somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 extra dollars out of your life over the course of ownership compared to a different approach. Let's talk about depreciation, because this is the silent killer that almost nobody accounts for when they're standing in a dealership feeling good about their choice. A new car loses roughly 20% of its value in the first year, not 5%, not 10, 20. On a $30,000 car, that's $6,000 gone before you've even finished the first set of oil changes. Over the first 3 years, most cars lose between 40 and 50% of their purchase price. You bought a $30,000 vehicle. You drive it for 3 years, and it's worth somewhere around $15,000 to $18,000. You paid for something worth $30,000. You now have something worth half that. The difference lived in your monthly payment and went nowhere useful. The reliability argument falls apart right here, by the way. People buy reliable cars specifically to keep them long-term and avoid that depreciation curve. That's the plan. Buy it, keep it for 10 years, drive it into the ground, get maximum value. Great plan in theory. But in practice, most Americans change cars every 5 to 7 years. Life happens. Needs change. A growing family, a job across the country, a new relationship, just plain boredom with the same car after a few years. The strategy that made buying the expensive, reliable car make financial sense never actually gets executed. The car gets traded in right when depreciation has done its worst damage, and the cycle starts again with another $30,000 purchase. And then there's something called the reliability halo effect, and it costs people enormous amounts of money without them ever noticing. Because Toyota and Honda have such strong reputations, people trust them. And because they trust them, they stop questioning everything else about the transaction. They don't negotiate as hard. They don't compare financing rates as carefully. They add on the extended warranty because the dealer says it's worth it, and somehow paying for extra protection on a car you bought specifically because it never breaks feels totally normal. They upgrade to a higher trim level because they're already spending so much. What's a few thousand more? The reliability reputation becomes a psychological permission slip to stop being careful about every other part of the deal. Dealers know this. They absolutely know this. When someone walks in asking specifically for a Camry or a CR-V, they've already made the hard decision. The dealer's job just got 50% easier. That customer is not walking out without buying one of those cars. The only question is how much extra they'll spend on the way to the exit, and the answer is usually several $1,000s more than they planned. Now let's look at the alternative, because this isn't about buying garbage cars that fall apart. This is about a completely different way of thinking about transportation costs. What if instead of buying the most reliable car, you bought the most cost-effective car? Those are not the same thing. A 3-year-old off-lease vehicle from a mainstream brand, properly inspected, with a clean history report, can be purchased for roughly half the price of its new equivalent. The aggressive first 3 years of depreciation already happened. You're not the one who absorbed that financial hit. The previous owner did. You're buying a car that still has most of its useful life ahead of it, still has most of its factory components in good shape, and costs you dramatically less to finance because the purchase price is dramatically lower. Take that same logic and apply it to a brand that doesn't carry the reliability premium. A 3-year-old Hyundai or Kia with 50,000 miles on it might cost $12,000 to $15,000. An equivalent Toyota or Honda with the same mileage might cost $18,000 to $22,000. The Toyota is more reliable, sure, but how much more reliable is it really in terms of dollars you'll actually spend? Independent repair data shows that the difference in average annual maintenance costs between a well-maintained Hyundai and a well-maintained Toyota over a 5-year period is somewhere around $200 to $400 per year. You paid $7,000 more upfront to save maybe $2,000 in repairs over 5 years. That's not a good trade. That is an expensive reputation. The middle class fell in love with reliability as a value because it feels like wisdom, and in some contexts, it is wisdom. If you're buying tools, buy the best ones. If you're buying appliances that you'll use for 20 years, buy quality. But cars are different because cars are not static purchases. Cars come with financing costs, insurance costs, depreciation curves, and a market that prices in reputation aggressively. The rules are different, and applying the buy quality logic without adjusting for those rules is what costs people money. There's another layer to this that nobody talks about, which is opportunity cost. Every dollar you spend on a car payment is a dollar that isn't sitting in an index fund, compounding at 8 or 10% annually. When you choose the $30,000 reliable car over the $14,000 practical car, the difference isn't just $16,000. It's what $16,000 becomes over the next 15 years if you invest it instead. At 8% annual growth, $16,000 becomes roughly $51,000 in 15 years. You didn't just spend $16,000 on a better car. You spent $51,000 in future wealth on a slightly less stressful driving experience. This is the conversation that never happens in personal finance circles when people talk about cars. Everyone focuses on the monthly payment. Nobody talks about the compounding opportunity that a lower car payment creates. If keeping your monthly car cost $200 lower allowed you to invest that $200 every month instead, over 10 years at 8% return, that's roughly $37,000 you built while someone else was just keeping their car payment current. The gap between the person who bought reliable and the person who bought cost-effective gets wider every single month, invisibly, quietly, in the background. But wait, you might say, what about the repairs? What about the stress of driving something that might break down? What about the time you lose taking a less reliable car to the shop? These are real concerns. They deserve real answers. Here's the reality. Most modern cars, including the brands people dismiss as unreliable, are dramatically better engineered than cars from 20 or 30 years ago. The data gap between Toyota reliability and Hyundai reliability, or between Honda reliability and Kia reliability, has shrunk considerably over the past decade. Hyundai now offers a warranty that covers the powertrain for 10 years or 100,000 miles. They did that because they needed to overcome their reputation. And in doing so, they essentially priced the reliability risk right into the ownership package. You get the reliability assurance, you just get it through a warranty rather than through brand heritage. The time and stress argument is also worth examining honestly. How often does the average person's car actually break down? For most people, driving a reasonably maintained vehicle of any mainstream brand, a breakdown that strands them somewhere is a once every several years event at most. You're paying the reliability premium every single month, year after year, to protect against something that might happen twice in a decade. Insurance makes sense when the risk is catastrophic, but a car repair, even an expensive one, is rarely catastrophic for someone who planned financially. A $1,000 repair is painful, but it's not life-altering. Paying an extra $300 a month for 6 years to avoid that repair is more expensive than just paying the repair if it happens. Here's something else that quietly drains middle-class wealth through the reliable car trap. Because reliable cars hold their value better, people feel wealthier when they own them. That feeling of having a valuable asset creates a false sense of financial security. You check your net worth on a spreadsheet, and the car shows up as an asset worth $18,000, and you feel comfortable. But a car is a liability pretending to be an asset. It costs you money every month to keep it. It loses value over time. It demands insurance and maintenance and fuel. The fact that it holds its value better than another car doesn't change what it fundamentally is. And mistaking the feeling of having a valuable car for actual financial progress is a quiet way that people let real wealth-building activities slide. This connects to something broader about how the middle class thinks about money versus how wealthy people actually behave. There's a famous observation in personal finance that wealthy people don't necessarily buy the best version of everything. They buy the best value version and deploy the savings into things that actually build wealth. The reliable car is the best version. It's top of the class. It has a famous reputation. But the cost-effective car, maintained properly and financed for less, frees up capital that can work for you somewhere else. The wealthy person drives a 3-year-old used car because they understand this math viscerally. The middle class drives a new reliable car because they're performing financial responsibility rather than actually practicing it. There's also the question of what this pattern does over a lifetime. The average American buys somewhere between 9 and 12 cars in their lifetime. If each purchase involves paying the reliability premium, the new car depreciation hit, and the financing costs that come with a higher purchase price, the cumulative impact over a lifetime of car buying is genuinely staggering. We're not talking about thousands of dollars. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that left your household and went to automakers, dealerships, banks, and insurance companies across a lifetime of feeling responsible about your transportation choices. The generation that came before us bought cars differently, largely because they had to. Financing was harder to get. Leasing wasn't as common. People kept cars for 10 and 15 years out of necessity. That forced patience was actually financially smart, even if it didn't feel like a strategy at the time. Modern car buying culture has been engineered by the industry to move people through vehicles faster, at higher prices, with more financing, and with more emotional attachment to brand and prestige. The reliable car narrative fits perfectly into that engineered culture. It gives you a reason to spend more that feels like wisdom rather than indulgence. So what does the smarter path actually look like? It looks like buying a 2 to 4-year-old vehicle with moderate mileage from a mainstream brand that has a solid warranty and documented service history. It looks like financing as little as possible, or not at all if you can manage it. It looks like keeping your total monthly transportation cost under 12 to 15% of your take-home pay. It looks like keeping that car for a long time, which is actually when reliability matters, not at the beginning of ownership, but at year 7, 8, 9, when you're driving something fully paid off and putting that former car payment into something that actually grows. The reliable car isn't a bad car. This isn't about avoiding quality. It's about understanding that quality in the car market is heavily priced in, and that the financial result of always buying the most reliable car, bought new, financed long, and traded before full depreciation recovery, is a lifetime of higher expenses dressed up as responsibility. You worked hard for your money. You saved, you planned, you made what felt like the smart choice. But the smart choice and the profitable choice aren't always the same thing. And in the car market specifically, the profitable choice usually looks a little less impressive in the driveway and a lot more impressive in the bank account. The car you drive doesn't build your future. The money you didn't spend on the car, invested consistently over decades, does. And that's the version of reliability that actually changes your financial life.